sons of bitches.
Well, we might as well show our faces before we have to get up and,
I'll do it. Mine's...
yeah, you gotta drink up. So the problem we just had was Lee's computer isn't muted, and it's going live over there, so we hear ourselves. But other than that, we're off to a great start, right? Other than that one little mix-up.
Yeah, everybody drink already. It has been a while.
It has. Is this our first coronavirus journal with us both back in Puerto Rico in 2021?
Well, absolutely in 2021.
But, I mean, we're halfway through the year now almost. I mean, we're a long ways. I keep thinking it's a new year, but, I mean, the months just keep going and going.
Well...
What is the month? It's like May?
I think we're, May 10th.
May 10th? Man.
May 10th. All right. Maybe the first thing that we should do is just kind of do a quick COVID number update. Let me switch over here to my PC.
It would be interesting to know what number we were at, like December 20th or whenever.
I know. We're looking at worldwide numbers here, 160 million cases, 3.3 million deaths. And the interesting thing right now, in all of the news, very little news in the States about coronavirus. Everything's about India. And you can see here, if you look at the new cases in India, 329,000 cases today.
Okay. What were we at the highest? We were in the 300s, right? We never cracked 400, did we?
I don't know, but everything's about India, and the system's collapsing, and everyone's dying in the streets and stuff. Look at the number that really matters. Deaths per 1 million population. We're at 1,700 and India is at 177 deaths per 1 million. So,
but couldn't that be explained by India's population? I mean, it's like 1 billion people, right?
I think 1.3 billion.
And they're just now having, they're calling it the second wave, but they're just now really seeing the numbers that we were seeing earlier in the pandemic. So couldn't it just be a lagging indicator that if India doesn't get it together, maybe in 6 months that number could be equal or
I know,
larger?
it's just, I don't know if funny is the right word, but it's interesting that...
Funny is definitely not the right word.
That everyone,
I'll go ahead and tell you that right
is
now.
like, India is the epicenter of the world and blah, 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 and then you look and they're like less than 1/10 of how bad it was in the United States. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe they're just behind us and they're going to get
Well,
hit the
and
exact same.
I got this down here still. I'm going to talk about me having COVID here soon, but a lot of people were saying that India is doing so well because they're all on ivermectin.
Okay.
And that was protecting them. Where's your ivermectin now, India?
Are you anti-ivermectin?
I mean, I took it. It's a little weird to I went...
You take hydroxychloroquine as well?
I didn't do the hydroxychloroquine, but I didn't have any ivermectin because I left it in Charleston. My dad got me all of this ivermectin, from where?
The horse shop?
No, from India. He got it all shipped in from India, so he has, actually I have some here, the legit pills. And I thought, man, I'm not going to get COVID. And then you and I got the vaccine. Mm-hmm. And then I came back and, I'm sure we'll get into it. We had COVID in the house. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't have it with me. So I was like, man, I'm about to do everything I can to make sure that I don't get worse, and that Kristen doesn't get worse.
Yeah.
So I went down to the farmer shop down by your jiu-jitsu gym, and I have this guy pull out this syringe, and he's just pulling out liquid out of a bottle that's not refrigerated, that's just sitting underneath.
That was what?
It was liquid ivermectin, 1%. And then I start researching it online, and everybody's like, you take this and you inject it, or you don't inject it into you, but you pull this out,
you eat it.
I was putting it under my tongue, and then eventually I started drinking it. I was a little scared. But then other people are buying the paste, and they're just eating this
horse paste.
Horse paste. But I mean, desperate times call for desperate measures, and then I finally get this shipped overnight, and by that point I was like, I'm already well into the symptoms and everything. You're supposed to do this early on. But anyway, the whole point, this isn't about me taking ivermectin. The whole point is
it's about you taking
many
horse
people
paste.
Were saying, look at India. They're all taking ivermectin prophylactically, and look at their numbers. It's the largest population, one of the poorest places in the world. I mean, there's poorer places too, but as a whole,
Not with that many people.
India is pretty poor for the amount of people that they have. they're just now getting hit. So, like, how do you make sense of that? Because we've been talking about India all summer last year, and they're just now having their outbreak. It's kind of strange, right? Something's going on.
It is weird, and it just makes you wonder, what about all these other countries that never got hit, like the countries in Africa? Are they just about to be hit?
I read a headline, didn't read the article, but that was the fear, is a lot of African countries are worried that they could be the next India. But it makes you ask why. Like, what is happening to where the United States, who's been the poster child of, like, we've handled it the worst of anybody, it sure feels like we're about to get back to normal. I think we have some videos and stuff about New York City opening up July 1st. I feel like I'm ready to abandon the masks altogether. I've had COVID and I've had the vaccine. I'm going to our gym here wearing a mask and working out. I feel...
And you had the horse paste.
Yeah, I got the horse paste and backup. And
You're good to go.
I'm just here looking at the concert schedule, just being like, are these shows going to happen? When can I see live music? When can I go to a bar and have a drink? I'm kind of over it at this point. But a lot of the rest of the world, they're saying Europe might not have a summer because they don't have enough vaccines. It's just very strange to see how this is all playing out, where suddenly America is somehow, we're not in the forefront. There's countries like Israel who've vaccinated almost all their population, but I think we're sitting around 59% of our population's been vaccinated.
And now, there's so many vaccines now that, all the Trumpsters are like, I don't even want it. I'm not going to take the vaccine.
So many people are vaccinated. Is that what you're saying? Or there's so many options?
I'm saying the United States has so much excess vaccines now.
Oh, right.
That the problem is not that we don't have enough vaccines like every other country in the world. The problem is that rednecks
can't
don't
give it
want
away enough. Yeah.
Yes. So we're going to have to get into that. Maybe we should begin with these India videos here.
Hey, Terry, the need here in India is still so desperate. In New Delhi, they are trying to control this outbreak. There's a lockdown in place, and you can see they've set up these roadblocks along some of the major highways. They're trying to make sure that everyone who is out has a reason to be out. But, Terry, you can see there's still plenty of cars. It is just nearly impossible to lock down a city of 22 million people. There's no way that many people can stay socially distant. And right now, the numbers, they just keep rising. In the last 24 hours, we've seen more than 400,000 cases, more than 4,000 deaths, and every expert agrees that those numbers are being drastically undercounted. Most likely, it is 5 to 10 times more than that. And Terry, we feel that on the ground. Nearly everyone we meet either had COVID themselves or has a loved one who is in need right now. One hospital worker that we spoke with, she told us that at her major hospital, 90% of the patients right now are COVID patients. Because everyone wants to know, how do we fix this? How do we get out of this crisis? So do you think that vaccines are the best way to get us out of this crisis?
At the moment, yes.
So I think if we do our little picture-in-picture here, it's probably set to the wrong thing. Let me set this to...
Did you read this headline a couple weeks ago that said that India has a ton of unaccounted cases, right? They're just not testing enough.
Yes,
and
I would imagine that's for all
it was something
countries.
like 500 million people, which is half their population.
Okay.
Already had cases of COVID, 500 million.
Well, I mean,
that
if
like,
that's the case, then they're about to reach herd immunity. They're going to be good.
Well, go back to the numbers up here. You have India pulled up, but what is the United States at?
Deaths per million?
No, just how many cases have we documented, and we might be under-documenting too, because a lot of people.
Yeah,
had it.
I'm sure.
A lot of people had it early on. I mean, maybe now we're kind of accurately figuring out how many people have it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of all this, all bets were off. I mean, we weren't testing. I didn't take my first real test until well into half the pandemic, I think.
So, USA total cases
330 million.
I think that's 33 million.
33 million. Sorry.
Does that matter, or do we need cases per 1 million population? Wouldn't that be?
All I'm saying is if they think India has potentially 500 million people have had it, or there's that many cases,
then they should be good.
Look at that number, though. I mean, even if you times ours by, you'd have to times ours by 10 to get close. I mean, more than 10. 10 would be 330 million.
Yeah.
India, they suspect, has already passed that number.
Then I don't understand. I mean, obviously they're going through a rough patch right now, but you would imagine they should be reaching herd immunity. If already half the population has gotten it, then I I don't know what number we need to get to, 70, 80% or something before it really starts dying.
James Hammett is asking, did Patrick live? Well, question answered.
Let's watch this one other video here on India that you got.
India continues to battle its deadly second wave of the coronavirus pandemic. And for the first time in 4 days, India has reported less than 400,000 daily cases. India recorded over 366,000 new infections on Sunday. On your screens right now is the number of cases India has reported in the last 1 week. You can see the number going down on Sunday, offering some respite for COVID hit India. Talking about COVID mortalities, India reported 3,754 COVID-related deaths in the last 24 hours.
That's just nothing. I mean, we were hitting those numbers, and we have less than a third of their population.
More than 246,000 Indians have lost their lives to the coronavirus until now.
I mean, that is an interesting way of looking at it. It's like we've had those numbers for months. How long did we hit 4,000 deaths a day?
Let's check the numbers.
We were definitely close in the 3,000, and I thought that was for like months.
Let's see, daily deaths.
Yep.
So just a little bit we hit.
But look how long we were at 3,000 deaths. I mean, you have to average out those peaks. But when is that? Scroll down just a touch more. Does that say November? November to like
February, March.
Like 2 or 3 months where we were doing that.
Yeah.
And India's already kind of coming down, but I mean, maybe you could look at our graph and say in December it was coming down a little bit and then it goes back up.
Yeah. All right. Enough of India. Are we done with India?
We are. Do you want to talk a little about personal life? Things have changed quite a bit for you. I'm shocked you don't have a little one here on his first live stream.
Yeah, he would not do well with
He wouldn't
that.
do well, but you're now a proud dad.
I am. I'm a tired dad. I have literally taken 3 naps today.
3 naps?
I don't know what's gotten into me, man. It feels like I took sleeping pills this
Sounds like the
morning.
life, though. I mean,
But I got plenty of sleep last night,
Yeah.
so I have no excuse. I've kiteboarded the last couple days, and I think my body just isn't used to using my legs like that, and I think
Yeah.
it's just killed me. So I don't think it's my baby's fault for once. But yeah, other than that, I would say things are
good to be back in Puerto Rico.
It is. It's nice to be back in Puerto Rico. See some of the old friends. A little hot.
It's starting to get really humid out here.
Yeah.
It was like kind of nice. Like I was here all winter, and I was like, man, this is the life right now. And then here we are in May, and I'm like, oh boy, the wind is dying down. I'm shocked you're kiting. It's like the wind is dying down from where it was. It started to heat up. It's starting to get muggy, and I'm like, ooh, I'm not looking forward to
Wind's
this.
been good the last 2 days, but it has been a little strange coming from the United States. We came from Florida, which has some of the least restrictions.
Yeah.
To Puerto Rico, which has some of the most restrictions. The other day, I went through Subway. I did not get the selfie special combo.
They still do that?
I don't know if they do or not. But when I was going to pay, the guy was like, you have to put your mask on. And I didn't have a mask.
Through the drive-thru?
Through the drive-thru.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, aren't we past this? I mean, everybody's vaccinated now. What's the big deal?
In the U.S., this is in, are you talking about?
In Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And I just remember thinking, like, this is kind of crazy. And I was thinking, maybe he's not going to give me my food, you know?
Just kind of pull your shirt
Yeah,
up.
I don't know. But he said, if a cop sees you, it's $100 fine if he sees you. And I'm like, I'm in my car. But maybe there's some rule about interacting through drive-thrus here.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I feel like nobody cares. This is the thing, like, Puerto Rico is probably the only place in the United States. There might be some cities like New York that require this, but Puerto Rico is the only place, as far as I know, where you have to have a negative test to fly into Puerto Rico. Now, you do flying in from other countries, but not interstates. Like,
it's not just that, but just a few days ago, they started charging $300 if you come in.
Fining you.
If you don't have a negative test within the last 72 hours, which in many cases is impossible to get.
You have to, like, take the test right before your flight, but then get the result back before the flight, but then not get it back too soon.
In many cases, that's not possible in some states. They fine you $300 unless you get tested later. It seems like a huge pain in the butt. So I'm so glad I flew in before that rule.
But all I'm thinking about with the negative tests is that they don't care if you've had COVID Nobody asked that. And then it doesn't seem like anybody cares if you've had the vaccine. Because at this very moment,
It's
I
so
feel
strange.
like I feel like I have the freedom to do whatever I want.
Yeah, you're bionic at this
Because
point.
I have both antibodies in a very short period of time.
And the horse paste.
And I got the horse pace, so like I'm good to go. You
Yeah,
know?
you're
Probably
ready to
not
live
as
it up.
good as those guys riding the horses down the street. Like they
Give it to the horse, give it to themselves,
yeah,
back to
they're
the horse.
taking that left and right. But it's just strange that a year ago, 6 months ago, we were all talking about these COVID vaccine passports. And those don't seem to exist. But now, how quickly I've changed, I don't know where I fell on that argument.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I kind of want that passport. Like, give me the passport so I can go wherever I want. We have a wedding in Italy that I don't know that you're going to go to, but one of our assistants and workers for F-stoppers is getting married. And I'm like, I want to go to Italy and just show them a
and
a
be
passport.
as followers of the coronavirus journals probably know, I find myself on many issues kind of right down the middle. And I really feel like I see things clearly from both sides. I have soy boy libtard friends, and I have right-wing nut job gun-loving friends as well. And I kind of find myself right down the middle, and I see how dangerous these vaccine passports can be. Because you could argue like this one doesn't matter, but what happens when they start making you have this digital thing that you carry around everywhere that keeps track of everything you do? It keeps track of all your medical history.
Where do you draw the line? Like 2 years ago, we would have said, man, the common flu kills a ton of Americans.
Yeah.
But I think at this moment, we would all be like, well, we don't need a passport for the flu shot.
Yeah, we're not going to force people to get that.
But at what percentage of deaths per year does it matter, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, your child's going to have a bunch of shots that you have to give them before they go to school and interact with other kids and stuff. And none of us care or think about that.
Yep.
But do you need a passport? I mean, I guess in some ways you do. When you see
Yeah, in some ways you do. And there's some countries you fly to where you have to have some sort of vaccine to go into those countries. I don't know if it's for malaria or what.
Yeah.
But everyone just knows you have to do that, and they do that. So on one hand, I feel like people are overreacting.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, I'm like, everything is a slippery slope. And I'm not that offended about this. And the whole point of the vaccine was like, we just have to, first it was flatten the curve.
Yeah.
Then it was maybe flatten the curve for like 6 months. Then it was, let's just flatten the curve until the vaccine comes. And now it's like, let's just be communists, and people don't have to work if they don't want to, and you should wear a mask
for
you should wear
everything.
2 masks even outside, even if you're vaccinated.
Yeah.
And by the way, we should do a vaccine passport. Like, it's gotten ridiculous at this point.
And I keep wondering, like, if we haven't done the vaccine passport now, when it kind of makes the most sense, what's going to happen in 8 months from now when the pandemic's really died down? Is that when they're going to start caring and be like, all humanity needs this vaccine?
Yeah,
and,
it doesn't make
oh,
sense.
you didn't, like, we both got the vaccine, so we're not like anti-vaxxers, but there's a lot of really smart people who are like, there's a lot of people here in this neighborhood that are just like, I don't feel like I see that many people. I'm probably very low risk anyway. I could probably go this whole pandemic and not catch it. I mean, that's what I thought too, and I got it. But I kind of respect that. Like, if you're not an anti-vaxxer who doesn't believe the science and you don't know how vaccines work, that's one whole other thing. But if you're just like, I don't really want to get it, or I haven't had time to get it, and then all of a sudden the pandemic's gone, it's kind of like the chances of you being a problem are so thin and small.
But the main issue that I have is, if you are vaccinated, then why do you care who else is vaccinated? And I've heard the argument said, well, we need as many people to be vaccinated as possible to shut down the virus and stop the potential mutations and variants.
Yeah.
Okay, like, I kind of understand that, but there's no possible way that we could get everyone on Earth vaccinated. That's just not possible, right? Within a reasonable amount of time.
Okay, yeah.
So let's say we could get the United States 100% vaccinated tomorrow. Aren't there going to be people flying in daily from India, where we've got the triple, what do they call it? The triple, I just saw
Triple Crown winner? What?
It was like a triple variant
Okay.
You know, it has morphed 3 times now, and it's extra dangerous or whatever. Like, those people are still going to be flying here, and then the fear is that variant is going to get past the vaccine. I just feel like I understand Dr. Fauci's position. You know, he's a virologist. This is his job. He's probably been preparing his whole life for this moment. He wants to do what's safest.
Yeah.
But he's not really considering the world and lifestyle and friends and family. Like, he's just trying to do what's safe. At a certain point, if everyone in the United States can get the vaccine if they want it, and a lot of people don't want it, then that's on them.
Yeah.
Like, let them suffer or not. Maybe I'm going to suffer. Maybe, you know, I'm going to get cancer down the road and go, why did I get this trial vaccine? And my friends with the machine guns and the MAGA hats are going to be like, told you, soy boy. And I'm going to.
You're going to perish and not live your whole life.
I don't know.
I don't think I've talked about this on the show because it's been so long, but I, maybe a month ago or so, was really interested in what happened with smallpox. Because if you look at pandemics across the history of humanity, smallpox, maybe number 1, it's like in the top 5. It killed hundreds of millions of people, right? Like maybe half the world's population at some point if you add it all up. It's an insane amount of people that have died from smallpox.
Yep.
And I learned watching some documentaries on YouTube that I guess I would have thought smallpox killed all of these people and became this thing that it is because it's so easily spread and it kills people so quickly that I would have thought, man, this pandemic happened in like 1910 and everyone died of this period. I mean, you have stories of our grandparents getting the vaccine and it was a big deal. But that's not what happened. Smallpox, it seems to have killed a ton of humans over a very, 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 very long period of time.
Hundreds of years?
Hundreds of years. And then they discovered the vaccine. I think all vaccines might have been discovered by finding out that you could get cowpox. So like milkmaids were like exposed to the cows. They got cowpox, but then they couldn't get smallpox. The previous treatment, and I forget, it's not a vaccine, it's some other word. It was we would take a patient that has smallpox, we'd cut off something, and I would give you my blood, essentially.
You put it in the horse paste.
You put it in the horse paste, you take it, and the idea was that I am kind of getting over it, or I've already started immune system, and then, but that wasn't very effective, right? People were dying very often with that. So we found the vaccine from cowpox. We give that to people, and we discover vaccines are possible. Well, sometime, I can't remember what it was. It was like in the 1930s or something, maybe like 1940s. A few people go to New York City with smallpox, and it just starts spreading like wildfire. And you would think, oh my gosh, that's got to be worse than even coronavirus because so many more people died. But what's really interesting is we quarantined and we contact traced back then so well in New York City that maybe one person died of smallpox in this huge breakout, and they contained it and they stopped it. And it was at that moment that they said, if we could do this in every other little pocket around the world where smallpox is prevalent, with the help of, at the time, a superpower of Russia, if we could do this, we could eliminate smallpox entirely from the planet.
So are you saying that the quarantining these people was better than the vaccine? It was...
Well, no, I think they just quarantined people and locked down travel from these hot spots, and then they vaccinated everybody around the people, and then I guess the people that got it died. I think from smallpox you die relatively quickly. Like in a week you're gone. Right?
Really?
It's really quick. And there's no incubation period. Like that's what coronavirus is so dangerous is. COVID-19 is so dangerous is because it's 14 days later, 10 days later, you thought you had a negative test, and you fly to Puerto Rico, and you mingle with everybody thinking, oh, I'm good. And then all of a sudden you realize, no, I was positive when I took that test. The test just didn't capture it, didn't detect it. So anyway, the whole point of the story is I just thought with smallpox, oh my gosh, this thing came out of nowhere. It's like anthrax. It came out of the ground. And all of a sudden, all these people, I mean, you remember when we had the anthrax scares?
Oh, yeah.
How silly it kind of was, like when you really think about it. Like millions of people weren't going to die from this. Dozens of people probably weren't going to die from it, right?
Yeah, it was like 6 people got it mailed to them.
But with smallpox, I just thought, man, like 200 years ago, tons of people worldwide were dying from it, and they were. But it wasn't a I don't know if it ever became a pandemic. I'd have to look that up. They didn't really talk about it. It might have just been like an epidemic for, hundreds and thousands of years. And over that time, it turned into one of the most deadly viruses in humanity. But then once we figured out how to get the vaccine, we kind of squashed it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I just compare that to what we're dealing with now, where this virus isn't really that deadly. And when you look at the big picture, I mean, it's like a pin drop compared to the number of deaths from like the Black Plague.
Yeah, but it's also only been a year and a half at this point. And the numbers are crazy. But again, the numbers, everyone admits that the COVID death numbers have been inflated. It's like, did you die of COVID or with COVID or whatever? And so
as time goes on, is the percentage of death changed? Because weren't we at one point like 0.5 or 0.05? And what is the flu? Is it 0.01 or something like that?
I just watched some video today. I didn't record it, but I think they were saying we're like 0.2% death rate or something. But again,
it seems like it's gone down.
I feel like you have to consider age in this,
Yeah.
If we're talking about 90-year-olds, like everything kills 90-year-olds. And if we're talking about children, it seems like, COVID's almost doesn't do anything to them.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. We got some other videos here. Economy outlook.
Shaw is gearing up for a busy summer. He usually hires 500 seasonal workers for his hotels on the Jersey Shore.
It's never been this hard to hire.
With just weeks to go, he's only halfway there.
What will it mean to your business if you don't get to full staff?
Well, we're going to get there, but your option is to cut your services.
Economists expected more than 1 million jobs to be added in April, but today's report came in with far less, just 266,000.
We never thought that after the first 50 or 60 days, everything would be fine. Today, there's more evidence that our economy is moving in the right direction.
NBC's Kelly O'Donnell asked the president about the extra unemployment benefits put in place during the pandemic that critics say can pay more than some jobs.
Do you believe enhanced unemployment benefits had any effect on diminishing a return to work in some categories?
No, nothing measurable.
In March, Eleanor Fernandez told us she's been looking for work for nearly a year. But at the time, she was only being offered low-paying, part-time positions.
You've been offered those jobs but didn't take them?
I haven't taken them yet because, honestly, the unemployment is a little bit more than the pay, too. I'll just be honest with that. It covers all my bills.
Some states are taking action. Next month, South Carolina and Montana are ending federal unemployment benefits, including the extra $300 a week. And in Maine, workers will have to prove they're actively looking for unemployment to receive the extra money.
So that last line, don't you already, maybe you don't have to prove, but you have, I've been on unemployment before. You have to you
used to have to, hit the number like, yes, I am looking. But that was the whole thing now is like, if you are worried about your health or caring for someone who's sick or, they made it just so that anybody could get the money if you wanted it. And then when Biden is saying it's not a measurable amount of people, of course, if you pay people to stay home, they're going to choose to stay home versus work. It's so obvious to me. So
yeah, and I mean, at this moment, maybe like 6 months ago, they tweaked it to where you got half of the government. Like the government was giving you $600 a month extra, and then maybe the states were giving you $300, which is what they talked there. Maybe it was $400, and they knocked it down. So it's been decreasing, but I've experienced this. I'd like to know what you guys think. Like in Charleston, Uber, it is impossible. Like I've almost gotten stuck in the airport 2 times now, and I've gotten to where, I don't like drinking. I don't drink and drive, period. So like if I go out to a bar and I want to meet up with somebody, I'm going to get the Uber that goes like 3 miles just from my house to the restaurant. It was like 25 minutes, and it was $40. And it used to be like $12. And every time I get in the Uber, I ask people like, what is going on with these, rideshare apps? And they're just saying most everyone that got unemployment through Uber, they can't take any rides. My understanding, you can't take any rides because then you'd
lose your free money.
You'd lose your unemployment because you're now taking work. So they just don't work at all. And you're only now starting to get a few new drivers who have never been on unemployment starting to drive. But it's like that with the it's not just Uber, it's taxi services, the shuttle in Charleston, they shut that down because of COVID. There's literally no way to get a ride from our airport to wherever it is that you're going.
It's so insane.
There's families stuck in the airport at midnight with all their kids and all their luggage, and I'm just like, I at least have friends that I can bug and be like, hey, can you pick me up? And
you kind of didn't, though. That night you got trapped, you were so late. You tried to call me, and I was asleep already.
Yeah, I reached out to everybody. No one responded. I got on Reddit, and I was like, anyone want to pick me up from the airport? Which is probably a mistake. Who knows who would have picked me up. But
Reddit.
finally, I got a Lyft. And it was downtown. He had to drive 25 minutes to get me. And I'm thinking the whole time, I'm willing to pay $100 to get home right now.
Yeah.
I was about to rent a car, and the rental car guy was like, we're out of cars. Couldn't even do that. And I'm thinking, isn't Uber's whole business plan to just surge that price until the point where somebody's like, hey, for $100, I'll get out of bed.
That's what's so weird about Uber, and I couldn't get any straight answers from the drivers. I remember, and I've dealt with this before, you know, on like New Year's Eve night or whatever.
It'll tell you 4X.
Yeah, 4, 5, 6X, and you're like, damn, it's going to cost me $100 to drive a few miles. I guess I have to. But something is going on around the United States right now where they just don't do surge pricing a lot, and they'll just say no cars available. And I'm like, but if you did 4 or 5X surge pricing, I guarantee you people would get out of bed for that.
And maybe they had a policy early on in this pandemic to not surge because of
COVID.
COVID.
Is that it?
I don't know. And then I hear other drivers and people online saying, no, it's because drivers don't want to pick up all these drunk college kids that are going to the bar and being reckless and everything. And I'm just like, man, again, this is where the passport thing could be beneficial. If you could just upload your COVID vaccine into Uber and it would star you, and drivers could be like, oh, I'm picking up somebody who's already been vaccinated or they've already had COVID. I feel safer about picking those people up, you know?
Yeah, that's why you need that vaccine passport.
I don't know, but I see videos like this where people are saying it's just so hard to get employees to work, you know? And then meanwhile in Congress, you have this movement of $15 an hour. I saw something where they might be pushing for $25 an hour. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If we can't get people to work, period.
Well, you can't get them to work as long as you're sending out free checks.
Right.
The second you're like, hey, now you got to go back to work, especially if you can get any job for $25 an hour. I mean, I imagine that would be detrimental to our economy.
That would crash the economy.
But then again, I would have thought a worldwide pandemic and crazy, you know, unemployment where nobody wants to work because they're getting paid to sit at home. I would imagine that would have crashed the economy. But in fact, the opposite has happened. We are at record highs. Everything has never been better.
I don't think the stock market's the economy. I think it's just that's inflation at work. I think everything has become more expensive because the dollar has dropped in value. But the way they index the dollar, it looks like the dollar's only dropped in value 2 or 3%. But I don't think that's what's going on. I think homes and assets are all going up because those are the things that are now inflating. We'll get to inflation a little bit. I have a little diagram down there, but I think the economy is in horrible shape.
Well, let's look at the housing market.
So why is the inventory low? Is it because people are scared? Is it because fewer people are moving? You know, there was a lot of movement earlier in the pandemic. I feel like 3 people moved off my street. So what's happening?
Well, I think some of it is that we have doubled the rate at which people are buying second homes. So you have some people living in 2 homes instead of 1. You also just have really low interest rates. So when somebody contacts us about moving up, instead of putting their old place on the market, they decide to have someone else pay their mortgage. If you can rent the place out and keep that 2.5% or 3% mortgage forever, you will. And then some of it is that America just hasn't been as aggressive about building housing as it once did. There isn't a political consensus around it. It's hard to get the permits. The builders haven't always had the confidence, although now they're going crazy trying to catch up to demand. So we just have a lot of chickens coming home to roost where we should have been building a long time ago. And now that everybody wants to move, we're just trying to catch up.
I actually have 2 more clips from this because I felt like this was such an interesting video. But the idea that people are buying second homes and just living in both of them. I never, like, that seems crazy to me, but like here I am in a position where I might be buying a house here in Puerto Rico and finding myself in a position I never would have thought I'd have 2 homes.
Yeah.
And you start thinking about, people working from home. I think they're about to talk about that a little bit. Maybe Google and some companies have tried to crack down on what they will allow. Or maybe Google's been more lenient. They said, we were going to let everyone work from home for a year, but now they're starting to say, this might be the future, Yeah. If you have a huge headquarters like Apple or Google, these massive complexes, you want people to come back to work, right?
Maybe you can save a ton of money by not doing that.
Even with those huge facilities.
Or you sell them or something.
I mean, you go up to like ESPN and it's, I mean, you know, you've been to these places and it's like the middle of, I don't say the middle of nowhere, but you go there and I mean, it's like a whole town. It's like a college campus.
Yeah.
And you have eateries and you have everybody there to like work out. Like you could literally sleep at your job and there's going to be beds and saunas and showers and it's amazing, right? I mean, I've never worked there. Maybe after a while, it's not so amazing.
I mean, it's certainly nicer than anywhere I've worked before. All right, let's see what this guy says.
Prices are also rising. Do you expect them to continue to rise through the end of the year? Like if you're looking now and you're having a hard time, should you be holding out for the fall, or is it only going to get worse?
I don't think prices will rise at the same rate. So it's a 20% year-on-year gain for the month of March, and that is a record gain. Most houses are now selling for above the asking price, which has never happened before. So I don't think that can continue. And what we've seen over the past few weeks is that some buyers are stepping back from these prices, but we still have so much more demand than supply that we are going to be supply constrained regardless. Lots of people are touring homes. They're just worried about being able to win the bid. And then even when they do win the bid, they're worried that their loan won't go through because the appraisal is going to come in so much lower than what they offered to pay. So I think you are going to see just a little bit of air come out of the balloon. It's not that prices are going to fall. They're just not going to rise quite as much. The only factor that's driving this is that if you are leaving San Francisco for Boise, Idaho, it doesn't matter if the price is double or triple, it still feels like you're paying a monopoly money because people are paying less for the home in Ohio, in Nevada, in Idaho than they were in California or New York. And that's why prices have been able to rise so much because so much of this is driven by migration.
Sound vaguely familiar?
Yes, it does. We are about to be homeless here in Puerto Rico. The real estate market in like the 3 nicest neighborhoods, we are in the 3rd nicest neighborhood, has gone bonkers. Like, what do you think the house prices in this neighborhood have gone up 50% in the last, I mean, in some cases they've gone up 100% in the last 3 months.
Oh, like doubled.
Yeah, they've doubled.
Doubled in 3 months.
Yeah, and people are coming in for the crazy tax incentives down here. They're coming from the New Yorks and the LAs or whatever, and they're used, you know, they're moving out of a very small
2-bedroom apart. Like you look at,
it's like a $2 million house that's very small, and then they come here and they're like, oh, I can get a pretty big house for $1 million or $2 million here. Sure, I'll pay cash. And I don't know if they're doing the research on what these houses were worth 3, 5, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
If they don't even care. But what it has done is it has created this buying frenzy where even we've lived in this house now for 2.5 years, and for 2.5 years the house has been for sale, and not every day, but most days we're like, man, I'm glad we get to rent this house because we don't want to own this house. And now all of a sudden that this house is up on the market for way more, now we're like, oh, we should have bought it. We really want this house. This house is so good compared to other houses in this neighborhood. And it's just this weird mentality. I feel like I'm getting wrapped up in this frenzy.
It's a FOMO. It's like, it feels like crypto taking off and you're like, I sold and I didn't get back in.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling, and I don't want to say I'm glad, but it's kind of reassuring that this is happening back in the States, because I can attribute all of it here with the tax incentives. Everyone back in the States are like, oh, people are moving from LA and New York, these high-taxed cities, and they're moving to Idaho and like Austin and Charleston, Florida, which has 0% state tax. But like Puerto Rico is the ultimate jump. You come here and it's like almost no taxes, right? Everyone's coming here, I think, for that, probably. They're also moving here because the pandemic sucks and you can work from home, and they're tired of being locked up in their tiny houses that are $2 million. Like, they want to live at the beach. Like, there's a ton of reasons to move here. But it just feels like you have like Logan and Jake Paul, who just moved to the #1 neighborhood. I think I saw a YouTube video, like they bought a $20 million house.
And I wonder if they bought a $20 million house in Dorado.
It was $10 million 2 years ago.
I wonder if it was $5
million 2 years ago?
Yeah, dude. Like, we almost moved to Dorado, but the prices were crazy. So we were looking at these little houses, maybe like
on defunctional golf courses.
Yeah, and
it's like you look out and you have a golf course in your backyard, but like no one's golfing on it. It's all
and we were inside the like fancy neighborhood gates, but this one golf course was dead. But we were looking at these small houses, and they were $7,500 a month rent, and we were going to need 2 of them. Here, we have this giant house, so we got it together. But I talked to somebody who lives in there, and he said that those little houses are now $20,000 a month.
Oh my gosh!
Because everybody, like, it's the nicest neighborhood in all of Puerto Rico. Everybody wants to be in there. That's where all the celebrities go.
And everyone's suspecting that what's happening is that people, I don't know if they can't afford to live there, or they're just starting to look at the second and third options and being like, oh, maybe I fit into Dorado, but I could buy 5 times the house with the same amount of money, or save money and not have to spend millions and move here. And so it's just this crazy bubble that's going on.
Yeah.
So we're in the midst of trying to figure out what we're doing. Luckily, I think we're good until the end of the year, hopefully. But I don't know if it's going to cool down before then, or if we have to strike while it's hot. We're trying to figure out, should we be renting? Should we be buying? Because on some level, like if this keeps inflating, and especially as more people find out about Puerto Rico, it's kind of the mentality of like the best, what's the phrase? The best time to invest was in the past, but the next best time to invest is right now. And it's like, if this keeps going, I mean, maybe this house could double in value. Like we've already seen it go up by $500,000 or whatever they're asking for.
Yeah.
It's like maybe it could go up even more.
Maybe it could. I mean, you're the one saying that you don't think the economy is healthy right now. I definitely don't think it's healthy right now. I feel like we are teetering on the edge of like total economic collapse.
Yeah.
And now we're playing with the value of the dollar and just printing, crazy relief fund, trillions of dollars.
But these are concerns why I think Puerto Rico might be looking more appealing for the ultra rich, which are going to be the ones that inflate. I mean, a lot of people are saying it's the people buying 2 homes moving from New York to Charleston that are inflating all these southern homes that didn't have that sort of, amount of people moving in and out. I think Puerto Rico could be like dynamite. You could have the ultra rich moving here, and to them it's like nothing. I keep thinking in my head, people who have like $10 million, $100 million in their bank, do they even care about taxes? Do they even care at all? Or is it this very small window of people between like $500,000 and $10 million that are like, man, if we move to Puerto Rico, it could like change our lives? You know what I mean? Like if you're Anna Winters, or you living in New York, just being like, I would never. Maybe never leave New York.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd have a second home, but I'm not going to spend half my time in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I think the people that come down here they're just willing to. It's all
juggling
checks
act of
and balances. Like you're just weighing your options. How connected are you to the big city of New York City? Like, are you capable of leaving for X amount of dollars, or is it not worth it to you? I know lots of people, I mean, I don't know exactly how much everyone has, but I know a few people in this neighborhood that I would imagine have over $30-40 million, and it was worth it for them to come down here. And then you go to Dorado, and I think there's a few people that have $1 billion in Dorado.
There was a Reddit post that gets shared every now and then that was written maybe like 6 months ago, and it was like the lifestyle of the rich and famous. And he goes through and he's like, if you're a billionaire, you don't care about anything. You will fly private and have a chef on your... It's like the craziest stuff, right? And he breaks it all the way down. And it was like, if you have $1 million to like $10 million, you're like almost invited to the table. And for most of us, you think like, man, if I had $1 million or $10 million, like I'd be rich and made, like it'd be like retirement time. But those people, it's like you probably vacation whenever you want, but you don't stay at the 5-star $1,000 a night hotels. You try to like... It was just a really interesting breakdown. If you're interested in reading this, I think it's a guy who's friends with billionaires, and so he's just written what it's like to be friends with all these people at different, wealth classes. But I think for maybe his breakdown, it was like if you have less than $100 million, you still will act in a very predictable way with your money.
Sure.
Whereas after $100 million, you start to just like lose all touch with reality.
That makes sense.
And then when you become a billionaire, it's like literally you're changing the course of humanity. Like imagine that. Imagine if you can change the outcome of the entire world maybe for the next 10 years, the next 100 years, you know? It's like
people like Elon Musk.
Elon Musk was just on SNL, and you think of like what he's doing. It's so insane, you know? Like he's not only trying to do the electric car and the batteries and the solar panel, but he's now sending rockets to Mars, and he's putting satellites around the planet, and maybe he will be the first person to send someone to Mars, and maybe they won't survive that. But you just start thinking of like all of this stuff that somebody like him is doing, or Jeff Bezos. It's so easy to hate on these guys, but you think like, man, a life without Amazon, like I don't know how that would look for me. I'm sure I could do it. We did it before.
Don't make me live in that hellhole.
You know, or Microsoft, and you think of like not having the personal computer. It's crazy to think like that. We're kind of on a tangent here, but
a little bit. All right, let's talk about the IRS and crypto. Dude, we got a lot more videos to get through. We got to go.
Right, David. Look, these might be virtual currencies, but people are going to have to pay actual taxes on their gains here. Take a look at this ruling we got from a Northern California federal court yesterday. What they've done is authorize the IRS to serve what's known as a John Doe summons on Kraken, the crypto exchange in California. John Doe summons allows you to go after, as law enforcement, people whose names you don't know. You suspect there might be some wrongdoing, and you want some information on them. The IRS here is seeking information about U.S. taxpayers who conducted at least $20,000 worth of transactions from 2016 to 2020. This follows a similar move, which happened in April. A federal court in Massachusetts authorized the IRS to serve a John Doe summons on Circle, the crypto exchange out of Boston. I connected with Circle this morning. What they told me is they are, of course, going to cooperate, and they hope to work collaboratively with the IRS on all of this. So what's the tax law here? Well, the Department of Justice put out a handy guide to this just yesterday. They say that virtual currencies that can be converted into traditional currency are property for tax purposes. A taxpayer can have a gain or loss on a sale or exchange of virtual currency, and all of that depends on the cost basis, the price of the virtual currency that the person paid in the early on in order to buy that virtual currency in the first place. So Morgan, as we look at this, and as you think about all the different ramifications of cryptocurrency, one of the things that people are going to have to bear in mind now is whatever their tax gains might be and how they're going to sort all that out with the IRS.
Yeah.
I mean, that's nothing new, right? What is he saying? You have to pay taxes on crypto gains?
Yeah, I think I just put this video in here because of the craziness that the crypto market is going through right now. I mean, everything is mooning. You got Dogecoin, which is like total shit, just like, is it like 3,000% up? Maybe it's more than that.
I read the other day it had a market cap of $86 billion.
Let me look up Doge real quick.
I don't even, like, what is Tesla worth right now?
In 1 month, Doge is up 518%. In 6 months, it's up 16,000%. I mean, Ethereum, like last night, I texted a group of our friends and I said, if Ethereum breaks $4,000, I'm selling. It broke 4,000 like an hour later. And I'm sitting here thinking like, are these just words I'm saying? Am I actually going to sell it? Like, it just keeps growing, and I keep finding myself wondering, is this the future or is this just a bubble, you know? Is this worthless stuff that has no value, or is this like the future? And it's so hard to know, you know, it's like being at that point when it's like the internet and you're like, oh, is this the way we're going to communicate? No, we're not going to send emails. And next thing you know, we can't get off of the internet.
So when we first came down to Puerto Rico, we went to Dorado because that's where we thought we were going to move. We ended up partying at this dude's house. And as far as I can tell, he had $500 million in Ethereum. That was like the math.
$500 million?
That's what we figured out. And I was in his hot tub, and we were having this like deep philosophical.
Everyone's like partying and drinking, and they're like cooking ribs and shots, and people. It was just crazy. And then here's Lee with the host of the party having this very serious conversation about crypto.
Crypto and the future of the world and the future of the internet and everything. And this guy was like, Lee, you need to go home tonight and buy $75,000 in Ethereum tonight. And if you don't, it will be the biggest mistake of your life, and you will never forget this moment.
Well, you're telling the story.
Yeah, so I was like, man, I can't spend 75 grand on this stuff. And it was cheap back then. It was, I think it was like I thought it was 200.
I thought it was 400.
Anyway, I ended up buying 5,000 of Ethereum and 5,000 of Bitcoin, I think around there. And I just kind of forgot about it. And then I just checked the other day and it was like 160 grand. And I've been looking at everything, just mooning and Dogecoin.
It's current. Your portfolio is currently worth that.
Yeah, so I think I bought them for like 10 grand and I got like 160. Well, I did the math, and if I had put 75 grand in, I'd have $1.5 million now in Ethereum. So you were right, and I will never forget that. I mean, I should have put all my money in.
I remember, I think it was $400 that night, and I remember we left because we were debating moving to Puerto Rico, and I remember like, so this was 2018, and there was a crash. I'd have to look up like when it happened, but it happened within like, maybe, was it like February 2018? Crypto crashed all the way down, and Ethereum went 50% down, 400 to 200, and we were like, dude, that guy had $500 million.
Yeah.
And he now has 250 million, which...
Well,
I was thinking, like, I can't imagine how he feels.
He might have had 500 million when it hit its peak. What was the highest it had ever gotten? Was it like 1,000,
1,100, something like that?
I think that's maybe when he had 500 million. He
Okay.
didn't tell us. We were just doing this math based on things that he said. So he had already lost hundreds of millions of dollars, I believe. But now
he's reached that.
I mean, if he
billion
held,
dollar-
yeah, he'd have over $1 billion in Ethereum.
Yeah. And so, like, going back to this IRS and the crypto thing, obviously we all think about that because we live in Puerto Rico and we're all kind of tax savvy or trying to be. Not just with crypto, but I keep wondering, like, with the GameStop and all this, like, we have a buddy who works for us who had some crazy tax woes where he made all this money one year and owed all these taxes because he sold, and then the next year he invested that money before tax season wrapped up and lost all of it and owed the IRS, was it like over $100,000 in like previous taxes, and you're just thinking, oh my gosh, like that would destroy me. Like I don't know how I would feel inside if I knew I'd lost everything and now I owe Uncle Sam $100,000 that I don't have, and
He made money, lost all the money he made, but because it was over the course of
2 different years.
Yeah. He had to pay
and so I
taxes
don't know.
on it.
I just think, and like maybe it's a warning to you guys out there that are into this stuff. It's like how many people are mooning with Doge that will sell and be shocked at the worst, be shocked that oh my gosh, like I'm hitting a 30% tax bracket, or I guess it depends what you're investing. You know,
Sure.
You could moon with $100. I see this on the internet all the time. All my buddies are like, dude, to the moon, and they have like $2,000 invested, and I'm like, it's not really life-changing money. Good for you, I guess. It's a huge risk, but it also made me think about just assets in general, because it's not just the crypto world that's going crazy. It's all assets are going crazy to some degree. The stock market is up at an insane rate. And if you start just selling stuff, playing these games, and not kind of thinking of the tax implications, I mean, I think a lot of people could find themselves in these positions where it's like, oh, wow, like I owe $10,000 extra.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think you should be upset about having to pay the, like, if you owe a lot of money in taxes, it's because you made a lot of money on your bet, you know? So I don't know that that's that big of a deal. But the problem that I had mentally was, okay, I've made a lot of money on this. I do think it's going to go down just because I think it's time, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not, maybe crypto is the future. I just feel like there's going to be another crash before it becomes the future. But I feel like the dollar might be losing all of its value. So do I want to sell all of this crypto that I think is going to crash and change it into dollars, which I think is crashing before my eyes right now? And I decided to. So I sold all my crypto.
And what is the gold argument? Can you buy gold and like the gold's not really going up like you would think, but at least the gold is going up a few percentage points where the dollar is going down?
I mean that's the gold bug's argument, is that like it's not an investment, it's just going to keep your value the same. So I have like 15-20% of my money in gold right now, but gold has gone down.
It feels like gold's going down even if it's growing at 4% or what, 10%, when everything else, home values are going up by a third or half, maybe doubling.
Yeah.
And the price of, you know, commodities are all going up by double digits.
Yeah, gold should at least be following lumber, and it's not at all. Let's see.
Go back. I think you missed one last house video.
I thought I did both of these.
Okay, you did. Maybe
We'll do this one on Ethereum.
I didn't get it in there.
Let's talk about the big ones, though. We've hit Dogecoin just enough. I think we talk about I hate to say the term, the real money, but I would say the big money where you've got some institutional players. I don't think you've got Goldman Sachs talking about Dogecoin yet. So let's talk about the ones they may be talking about, BK, which is Ethereum and Bitcoin. Ethereum above $4,000. I mean, it has boomed. What is behind this last 2 to 3 week surge in ETH?
Yeah, so you've got a couple things going on with Ethereum. One, the DeFi or decentralized finance. A lot of those projects are built on top of Ethereum. The second part is coming up in July, Ethereum's going to do a hard fork, or what we might call a software upgrade for simple terms. And what that's going to do is going to change its monetary policy. So it resembles something a little bit more like Bitcoin, not exactly, but basically it's going to cut the supply down a bit. So you've got, good development plus a monetary policy change, and that's really what's fueling Ethereum at this point in time.
So yeah, the guy who told me to put 75 grand in Ethereum, he was at the time, and I guess previously, writing software that worked with the smart contracts of Ethereum. I know so little about it.
I don't feel like
but
I do.
He had this very clear picture and explanation of what the internet of the future will look like, and he explained it to me. And his confidence was very
reassuring. Or
infectious. And I was just, he was making me excited. Yeah. That wow, this guy's really smart. He knows what he's talking about, type thing. Obviously, I didn't listen to him and put 75 grand in. Should have done it. Should have.
That's what's frustrating with crypto is I feel like there was a point when I thought I understood how Bitcoin worked, but I feel like the majority of people, including me, I'm the first one to say, we really don't know what any of this stuff does. And the one that gets me is I was talking to a buddy of ours today at the gym with NFTs. That's how well I know what this stuff is. And I was like, I just don't understand the concept of people were selling their tweets. And I'm like, who owns the tweet? I would imagine it's intellectual property that lives on Twitter's servers. And you wrote it.
What do you mean by own the, what aspect of the tweet? The photo of the tweet? The text?
Is a tweet part of Twitter? Or is the tweet the concept of in your mind? It's like the phrase? Is it like the wording? But what I was questioning about is I was like, what does it mean to put a tweet on the blockchain somewhere and then sell that? Because you can't sell like a picture. Because a picture is way too many megabytes for a blockchain. It's like you're selling a link. It's almost like Bitly. You're selling a link to an asset. And he was saying maybe the asset could be removed from the internet. Do you own it anymore? But I was just thinking of these people that are selling Twitter tweets. And I'm like, what does that even mean? And who owns the rights to those? I feel like it's so confusing to me.
Either. And then Beeple, the artist, what did he get? $70 million for his Instagram art. He lives in Charleston, apparently.
Yeah.
He was a neighbor of ours. It's insane. Good for him, though. 420 Tendies, thanks for the super chat. He says Dogecoin to 420. Wouldn't that be crazy?
Well, we should at least buy some Doge with the $1.99 that he gave us. I don't even know how to buy Doge. This is the thing that frustrates me with crypto.
Is it not on the Coinbase?
No, there's so many different marketplaces, and I've had marketplaces go bottom up, and next thing you know, whatever you own in some Italian coin, Coinbase that's in Italy is gone. It's like, man, I just lost whatever, $500 or something, $1,000. It's frustrating how difficult it can be to buy this stuff.
Well, let's look at some inflation.
Does this give us any, I suppose, further conviction whether, is the inflation transitory? Is it just reflation? Is it an ongoing theme that markets are rightfully backing? Does it give us any more information on that?
I think the developments on Friday doesn't really tell us very much about that, but I think what the commodity prices and the input prices are really telling us is that inflation, short term at least, is going to have some very scary numbers. We're going to be, for example, this week's number in the US, we're looking at something like 3.6%. And I think what the market's got to start doing is at least pricing in some probability into the bond market that perhaps this inflation is not as transitory. But at the moment, I think the view is very much that the inflation is transitory. We think it's going to last at least until the end of the year, so staying above the Fed's target until the end of the year. And then once they start withdrawing the stimulus, then we'll actually see, as the tide is going out, that the inflation number hasn't really changed very much. So I think the Fed, having experimented for the last 10 years, is trying to keep on running it hot But I think at the end of the day, the disinflationary forces are still very strong in the economy. And I think what we have to do to reverse the sort of 30-year trend down in inflation is to reverse some of the things that have actually caused that disinflation. And I don't think we're anywhere close to doing that.
I'm so curious to see what happens when we end the rent forbearance and the unemployment. And imagine, like, do we have an unrealistic expectation of the amount of money in our bank accounts? If you're on Robinhood and you have GameStop and you have an extra $50,000 and then suddenly it crashes to pennies, like, are we fooling ourselves into looking at our crypto portfolios and being like, dude, I'm so freaking smart, I'm so rich?
Dude.
Or is this just like a mental game that we're all playing with each other? We all feel like, I mean, everyone doesn't feel like this, but a lot of people are like, I'm on unemployment, like I'm making ends meet. But what happens when the unemployment ends? I was telling this to my sister. I'm like, you're so lucky that you got a job now, because I fear that when the unemployment ends, everyone's going to be looking for a job.
It's gonna be a rush.
You're not going to be able to find anything.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are debating.
And there might be a race to the bottom, you know, like, oh, you're going to give it to that person for $20 an hour? I'll do it for 15.
Yeah.
Hire me instead for less.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just, it seems like that is what I would imagine is going to come. Obviously, through these coronavirus journals, we've been so wrong on so many things. But this, it just doesn't add up. Like, where are we going with all of this?
Carl Hancock says, you can buy crypto on Robinhood, including Doge, but it's purely for buying, selling, holding. It's not like Coinbase where it's a wallet.
Is anybody just giving up on, like, I've never used Robinhood, but after that whole fiasco where they stopped the selling of GameStop and some of the other,
That was
I just
crazy.
feel like I would never use that platform anymore. But I mean, I think that is a good warning of the illiquid nature of these markets once something turns the other direction. It's easy to say, man, Ethereum drops 25%, I'll just sell and get out. But that's not exactly how it works, you know? If you have no buyers and it's dumping, I mean, you could see all of it just poof, be gone, you know? And what is that going to do for the mentality of the American public when you thought that you had a nest egg in GameStop or an AMD and Microsoft? Like, name whatever it is that you've invested in, and then all of a sudden it turns around and we have a major correction. I mean, I know how I felt last March when the market crashed like 25, 30%. It was a gut-wrenching feeling, and I feel like a lot of people weren't investing back then the way they suddenly now are in the next year.
Absolutely.
And so what happens when a lot more people experience another 30% correction? You know, we were talking about the beginning of this coronavirus journal, like people were committing suicide and stuff because they'd lost so much money in the stock market, and relatives are dying from COVID, and people are going through massive amounts of depression. It feels like right now everyone's on a euphoric cloud thinking, man, my house price, like I just looked on Zillow, my house, it's like hard not to find comfort and say like, man, I got my shit together because of these made up numbers, but they don't really mean a whole lot.
They do if you sell, but yeah, if you hold and then it crashes, it doesn't mean so much. Logan says you can buy Doge on Uphold. Uphold is like Coinbase, but also has Forex. What is Forex? Equities and metal. Is that where Forex is where you're trading currencies, maybe? Anything to anything, it's a wallet. Interesting. I'll have to check it out. One thing that has been on my mind during all of this, and I think about with you a lot, but like you're diversified, you've got money all over the place, so like you're gonna be fine no matter what happens. But I think a lot of people have forgotten what a true crash is. You talk to people and they're like, yeah, we just went through the crash. It was, you know, in March and it went down 30% and now we're up 100%. And that was the crash. That was the 10-year crash. And, you know, economy's booming now. Everything's great. And I'm like,
I don't think that's ever happened in the history, at least the last 100 years.
Yeah.
We've never had a V recovery that's gone past in such a short period of time.
Yeah, like real crashes could potentially be years of the stock market going
A decade.
down.
I mean, the last 2008 took a long time to get out of.
The bottom of the housing market, if I remember correctly, might have been around 2014.
Yeah, it was like 3 to 4 years after the crash.
I mean, that's 6 years after the crash. Maybe it was 2012, so that would be 4.
I had buddies, like, I bought my first house. We bought houses at the same time. It was like 2012, 2013,
Okay.
first home I'd ever bought. I had buddies who bought, you know, their college rental, you know, that they lived in. And, you know, they bought 2007, somewhere around there. And I had several friends that were upside down in their property.
Yeah.
And it was the scariest thing to hear them talk about it, you know.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, weren't super expensive properties, but it's just thinking like, I'm paying a rate to a bank of for a house that's like, maybe I've already paid off that current value of what the house is, but now I'm upside down in it. And I just have to like hold and just hope that, one, I can afford to pay this off, and then 2, that there'll be a day where it's worth more than what it was when I bought it.
But, you know, at a certain point, it becomes, you know, kind of like the moving to Puerto Rico argument. It just becomes this decision that you have to make. And you go, okay, if I default on my home and I go rent, I can save X amount of money. And then it'll take, I don't know, how long is it, 7 years for my
credit score to go back up?
Yeah. But at a certain point, that number is there for everybody. You know, maybe for one person it'd be 50 grand, maybe for another person it'd be $2 million. I don't know. But at a certain point, if you aren't legally obligated to pay for something and it's not worth that anymore, you just walk away from it, and that's when the snowball really happens. And I think a lot of the people who are feeling the euphoria right now are young people who weren't around back in 2008. They were children.
Yeah.
Even I was a working adult, but I was broke in 2008. I didn't have any money in the stock market.
I don't recall the market being down. I would hear people tell me, and I would see, we were working at Ritz. I don't know if you were at Ritz at that time, 2008. I stayed around a little bit longer. But, you know, you just be like, oh, less people are buying cameras. There's something going on. But in my mind, I was getting the same paycheck. I was still broke. I still had no money. Like, it didn't affect me. You know, the bars were still open or whatever it was. But I wonder what this next phase is going to look like, because if stocks and crypto are all up, you know, crypto is kind of what the younger generation, the millennials that we're just on the cusp of, are doing. Maybe people are going to be traveling all over the world and living life like it's, you know, 2 years ago. But what happens when that market crashes and suddenly people need to get jobs again? And the idea of maybe the influencer kind of depreciates, and like now suddenly you can't travel, and maybe travel restrictions are still in place. Like, I just wonder if the hospitality market is going to rebound the way that so many people believe, because it sure feels like from the people I talk to that own restaurants, it's been this super slow bleed, that things are not good, but it's not like a definitive moment when you're like, I'm closing shop and I'm done. It's like, I think we can get through this. But if it just keeps going down and down and down and down and down and down and down, it's like at some point you're just like, you look back and say, these last 6 months have been horrible. I have no employees. I can't get people into work. I have no customers coming in. Like, we've seen so many restaurants in the towns we used to live in just shut down. And nobody's going to open a new restaurant in that atmosphere.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm shocked that we are a year later still wondering what's going to come from this. But the biggest takeaway I get from watching these videos is it's like the rich are getting richer, right? They're buying second and third properties in different states at the lowest interest rates ever.
They might be paying inflated prices for the homes, though.
They might, but then I just feel like a lot of people are finding hope in this dream, and it's the Doge coin, you know?
I know, it's insane.
And then what happens? I mean, Doge is going to crash. It literally doesn't represent or do anything. What happens when Amazon or Apple or the United States government comes up with a cryptocurrency that actually does have a purpose?
And it's usable.
And it's usable.
Yeah.
I feel like even some of these other things like Bitcoin could be in serious trouble. It's not very efficient. Costs a lot. It's a super expensive way to mine and create it. It takes up so much energy. I don't know that it's going to last, but at the moment, it seems like it's the strongest.
I know. There will be a crash. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or it's going to be in 20 years from now, but there will be a crash, and it's going to be a wake-up call to all of us, including me. I'm heavy in cash. Maybe my money's going to crash due to inflation. you know, and I'm going to feel the pain that way. Who the heck knows?
It sure feels like we are at like one of the most pivotal, important moments in history, though.
Seems like it.
And you look back, and I'd always look at like World War II and be like, what? All the countries around the world teamed up and like fought with the Holocaust and nuclear bombs. It was like, seemed like the craziest thing ever. It still seems crazy when I think about it. But in some ways, I feel like what we're all going through now, like COVID is one thing. The pandemic is, super interesting moment in history as well. But all of the other things that I feel like are just under the rug that haven't really manifested yet, I feel like we're in for a wild ride the next couple of years. And technology is booming in a way that it feels like things are, it's the K recovery at like times a million.
What would happen, and I've heard a couple of doctors talk about this, if there is a variant that beats
circumvents
the vaccine.
I like to circumvent.
And what if I told you what
just keep talking.
What if I told you that in a few months from now the pandemic is going to restart and it's going to be like March 2020 all over again?
It's going to be like little wars and like uprising. That'd be like the most pulling the rug from everyone.
How insane would that be? I mean,
is that still on the table? Like, I mean, I hear a lot of doctors say like they think that everyone's being very optimistic, but and the reality is this will still be here for years and we'll get booster shots, and maybe that's still a pretty optimistic view. We'll just get booster shots and we'll reinvent the vaccine, and but with each reinvention of the vaccine, does it like exponentially increase the idea that like maybe we're doing something wrong? Like maybe our medicine could be detrimental to large generations of people, if you just keep having to do this? I don't know.
I don't know. All right.
Go to put the picture up from the inflation numbers. Somebody shared this with me in an investing group, so I have not vetted this. It doesn't come from like a news source, but these were commodity prices over the last year. I've been renovating the back of my house in Charleston and building a new photography studio. And one thing that's been really interesting is I got a quote from a builder for a price that you thought was pretty high at the time.
Yes.
But he gave me the price, and you're in a contract, and like he has to go out and buy lumber. Lumber's up 347%.
How insane is that?
And it's not just, you think of lumber, you think 2x4s. It's like particle boards. It's every piece of wood that goes into a house, is up in price. And so it just makes you think like how hard it must be to try to come up with an accurate price for.
And is this gold down here? What is this?
I don't know. Can you zoom out? Oh, it cut it off.
Yeah, I cut it off. Gold. There it is. 4%. The one thing I invested the most in, 4% up. I should have put all my money in lumber.
I mean, I wonder if this stuff is like really true. Like when you buy a Starbucks coffee or when you buy coffee beans, is it really 35% up?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, Kristen was just talking about she bought some beans, Starbucks beans in the grocery store for like $6, $7. I could have sworn that's what it was like 2 years ago. I mean, sometimes Starbucks beans are like $10 a little pack.
Is palladium, what is palladium?
Palladium's a precious metal.
Okay. Because I've also heard that...
like palladium and platinum.
What do we...
Catalytic converters?
No.
Rhodium. I've been on a rare metal kick recently.
You own some?
I think I do. I don't remember. I definitely bought copper and like nickel. Nickel is one of the most widely used metals in lithium batteries. So a lot of people would think like lithium would do really well, but it's actually nickel that is the bigger part of a lithium battery.
Mojo Rogue says, "You right, Patrick. The rights to vaccine production can start a legit war."
I'm not even talking about that.
That's something interesting that we haven't gotten a video of today, but Biden said months ago before he was president that he would be, I don't know what it's called, but like unlocking or unrestricting the patents from the vaccines so that labs around the world could create American-made vaccines for free or without paying some
a lot of these vaccines aren't even American. They're like they're designed overseas, and we're just distributing them.
Yeah, but he hasn't done it yet, and there are some labs around the world that claim they could be producing it, but they don't have the magic juice.
And they care. Like China doesn't care about intellectual property. Like they'll be the first ones to rip off our vaccine.
Yeah.
I just wonder at what point do you respect international law? Like we have treaties to like keep all of that in account, but if your population's dying of a pandemic and you're Uzbekistan or something and you're just like, man, we have a facility that can make this, just like open the gates, like do it. Who cares what we'll deal with the repercussions of, trade laws later.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think at least one of the lab owners that I heard a quote from was saying that even though they may be able to get the vaccine and like look at the code, they don't know how to make it. They need Pfizer or whatever to release the
special sauces.
Special sauce.
I think Canada, isn't Canada incapable of making their own vaccine? And we said we would sell them surplus, but at the time
this guy that I'm talking about had a lab in Canada.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Speaking of vaccine, we can watch this.
This morning, Pfizer announcing they're starting the submission process for full approval for their COVID-19 vaccine in the U.S. This as California counts down to...
In case that wasn't clear, they're actually trying to get full FDA approval. So right now...
It's like an emergency.
Yeah.
To mid-June. That's when some specialists at UCSF say the state could reach herd immunity.
It's big. It's important. Here's why. Obviously, on some level, day-to-day, vaccinations will continue, and in that way, it's not a huge deal. But it's a signal that we have so much safety data now on millions and tens of millions of people that we can get the full authorization, the full approval.
Anywhere that had terrible surges paid a price to get there. We never wanted to get to herd immunity with a combination of natural...
All right, you get the idea. So that's pretty crazy that I'm on this subreddit called No New Normal that I find, in some cases I agree with what they're saying, but for the most part, the people on the subreddit are...
The white knights and the crazy people who think like...
No, not the white knights are the ones that are like, if one person dies, I'll stay inside.
That's not no new normal?
No new normal is that like this whole pandemic is blown out of proportion. I'm not taking the vaccine. If I catch the virus, I'm going to be fine. It's these people.
Oh, okay. And like every future thing that comes our way is going to be manipulated by the media and turned into like...
Yeah, so they every day bring up how these, I'm not anti-vaccine, but these vaccines aren't FDA approved and they haven't gone through the normal channels and blah, 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 and I'm not a test rat and blah, blah. But soon it could actually be FDA approved, which would then shut down that argument, which I'm interested to see. Like, one of my best friends here doesn't want to take the vaccine because he said he would take the Johnson & Johnson one because it's a normal vaccine, but he doesn't want to take the mRNA vaccine.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough
science or studies. Or
but if it becomes FDA approved, he's taken a bunch of other vaccines in his life he hasn't researched, so like why?
I mean, and I totally get it. I don't know enough about the vaccine history, but I just always say, like, every time something's approved by the FDA, what do you see 10 years later? You see all the ads that are like, warning, have you been using X drug and experienced melaleuthemia or whatever, and you're just like, it feels like, I've been on so many drugs. I was on Accutane for like acne, and then they said there was a link to that and Crohn's disease, but I had Crohn's disease before I took the drug, so I know that wasn't it. But
bummer, you could have gotten paid.
It's just, you see it all the time. Like every drug that gets approved, not every drug, but there's a lot of them. And you watch like channels with older people, like the news, and you see these ads all the time, and it's just shocking how many new drugs we're seeing advertised.
Uh-oh, it looks like we've got a no new normal guy.
Uh-oh, you're going to be called out?
Hypers. FDA approval, aka getting paid off. Yeah, so he definitely hangs out on the No New Normal subreddit. Here's another interesting thing, and this is also what I see on this subreddit on a daily basis. Have you heard about these numbers, like over 3,000 people dying from the vaccine? Have you heard this statistic?
No, I have not.
Okay, well, Tucker Carlson.
Oh, man.
He quoted it a week or so ago.
Yeah.
And everyone on the subreddit was like, oh, shit, like Tucker actually, said these numbers or whatever. And basically there is this somewhat legitimate system for keeping track of people with adverse side effects from this vaccine. But the not so often talked about aspect is that anyone can submit anything to it, and they're not
vetting it.
Yeah, they're not checked.
So
right?
when we got the vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson one, there was something you could sign up to that I assume you probably didn't take the time to do it. I did, and then I never did anything with it. But every day they would text me and ask you questions, and I guess you're saying I could have typed in anything.
Well, not just that.
That like I'm deathly ill.
I think you might be able to go to this website and be like, "My mom died from it."
Oh, so it's not even tracking that you.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know, but we can watch this quick video that kind of explains it in a little bit more detail.
There's been a lot of discussions recently that the COVID-19 vaccines have caused a high number of deaths. Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson recently said that a total of 3,362 people apparently died after getting the COVID-19 vaccines in the United States. He cited the CDC's Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. So we wanted to verify, does the CDC's database confirm deaths caused by COVID-19 vaccines? With Verify, we tell you our sources first and foremost. We went straight to the FDA and CDC, which operate the database. Now, before we get into the data, let's talk about the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, or more simply, VAERS. The purpose of VAERS is to detect signals of possible side effects or other negative impacts associated with vaccines. This includes people who died after getting the COVID-19 vaccine. As of May 6th, that number comes out to 3,442. However, there is a significant disclaimer on the database's website. It says, note that the inclusion of events in VAERS data does not imply causality. In other words, even though a case might be listed as a death connected to the COVID-19 vaccine, that does not mean the death was caused by the vaccine. And here's another disclaimer about VAERS. It relies heavily on self-reporting, meaning anyone can report an adverse event to the database. Because the data included in VAERS is not verified, and because it does not confirm causality, the answer to our question is no. The CDC's database does not confirm deaths were caused by COVID-19 vaccines.
So
if it were true, the math I just did, and if my math was true, it looks like if half the population have had the vaccine, 150 million people have been vaccinated, and 3,400 people have died, that's 0.2%. So in that case, it would almost be like the cure is worse than the disease if those numbers were true.
It's interesting you say that. I think it was Sweden that came out, and some health minister dude was saying that with the current numbers, he believes that more young people would die from the vaccine than from COVID-19. I don't know what age that was. I don't remember. You guys can Google it, I'm sure, and find it. But that was pretty interesting that somebody in a high position actually said that, because everybody on my No New Normal subreddit says that every day. Yeah. More people are dying, and like, that's obviously not true. And the other thing to keep in mind is every single person that got the vaccine first on Earth, but especially in the United States, was an old person, most of them being in assisted living facilities. And the average age, life expectancy from someone living in an assisted living facility is 6 months. So we will all die after taking every vaccine. It's just how long and were we going to die anyway. And so the 3,300 number is not accurate because we don't have all of the information, but it's also probably not accurate because people in their 90s were being given this vaccine and people in their 90s die.
Yeah.
All right, we'll end on a little bit of good news here.
Summer. This is going to be the summer of New York City.
This morning, New York City eyeing a rebound July 1st, lifting restrictions and planning to fully reopen for the first time in more than a year.
We are ready for stores to open, for businesses to open, offices, theaters, full strength.
With fewer infections and now more than 6 million vaccinations, the one-time epicenter of the pandemic is keeping COVID under control.
Now we can see that light at the end of the tunnel.
Governor Andrew Cuomo said while making projections was irresponsible, he's optimistic.
I think if we do what we have to do, we can be reopened earlier.
In California, which has recovered from a deadly surge just months ago, Disneyland will reopen to visitors today after an unprecedented 13-month closure. The world-famous theme park will operate at a limited capacity and allow only in-state visitors. In Michigan, reopening the state depends on what the governor called a back to normal challenge, tied to meeting vaccination goals.
And eventually, we'll get over that finish line.
But Oregon is still deep in its fourth surge. Hospitalizations have nearly doubled.
Can I ask why was the person speaking wearing a mask, but the person doing the
sign language wasn't? I
yeah,
didn't catch that.
the person doing the sign language didn't.
Tied to meeting vaccination goals.
And eventually.
What the heck,
that
man?
face, you just paused it like a
she looks
like
scary.
a supervillain.
We'll get over that finish line.
But Oregon is still deep in its fourth surge. Hospitalizations have nearly doubled in the last 2 weeks, and 15 counties are now moving back to extreme risk, meaning no indoor dining and other restrictions.
What do you think is going on with Disney? Because you have the tale of two Disney theme parks. You just went to Disney. I was supposed to go to Disney with you, but we had just kind of gotten over COVID. We weren't sure if we were safe to fly, which is a whole nother interesting argument, the negative testing. And then I felt like nauseous, so I was like, I don't know if I really feel comfortable going on rides and stuff. But Disney World in Orlando has been open for 6 months, like long periods of time.
Yeah.
Disney's been open for a while. But then Disneyland, which
been
is
closed for over
essentially
1
the
year.
same thing, right? Like
Yeah.
they could implement the same safety protocols. Is it just a state thing? It's like
absolutely.
California is like no.
It's those soy boys over
Florida
in
is like
California.
yes, but the same single company that can implement like it just seems really weird, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's super weird. You know, I can definitely see a place like New York City saying, look, we're not like anywhere else in the United States. We have to have very specific rules.
We're so dense.
Yeah, I mean, we got subways and stuff. Nobody has subways that are being used like they are in New York. But when you compare Disneyland to Disney World, it's pretty similar.
I guess you would have a hard time being like, we're locking everything down except Disney is safe. We'll keep that open.
Yeah,
exactly. When I saw this news story, this is like a week old, the idea of New York reopening. It made me just wonder, how are the people of New York going to embrace that? Because we have lots of friends in New York, and I don't want to say everyone in New York is liberal or is the white knights and everything, but certainly it feels like more of our friends are like that in New York. They've dealt with the epicenter. It was the worst place. Everyone was locked down. We all sat from afar watching New York and being like, what's going to happen? But it feels like New York has been locked down for a long time, and they've gone through such an emotional experience. I just wonder, are they capable of truly opening up the way that the governor and the mayor are acting like? Are New Yorkers, it'd be interesting to know if anyone's from New York, are New Yorkers looking to flock into the movie theaters? Or do you think because they took a certain stance? I heard this from a guy on Joe Rogan the other day. Joe Rogan had a guest who was talking about figuring out what happened in China and where the virus came from. Did it come from a lab, or did it come from a natural zoonotic transmission, right? And he was just saying how our media is so screwed up and how we're so screwed up, because if you made a political type statement on Twitter a year ago, you are incapable of changing your mind and coming out with a new statement. And so when you have so many people in New York, and you know, I'm just using New York as an example, but when you have so many people in New York that are like, if one person dies, you know, or we have to shut down everything, or I've watched my businesses close down, like we've done all of this for this goal, are they going to just be able to change their mind and then suddenly be like, oh, Fauci and who's not Cuomo, but who's their governor? Blasio?
Yeah.
They say we can go out now. Are they going to be able to mentally flip in that way?
Well, I mean, I feel like so many other states have done that. You know,
have they, or did they already align themselves in a certain?
I mean, well, we talked about this months ago. All the white knights on Facebook who I'm watching, who are making these posts about how if one person dies, I will happily stay inside for the rest of the year. Well, 6 months into the lockdown, they got tired of that, and nobody said that anymore. I haven't seen a single person say that in 9 months. You know?
I still see it. I have a lot of friends in LA and in New York, and I still get that vibe.
I still want to stay inside.
I got the vaccine, and I can't wait to finally go back out, but now's not the right time. We've come so far.
Okay, that's different. That's different.
I'm kind of like, man, if you got the vaccine,
yeah, you should get
start
to live
going
your life.
out.
But my point is that many of these states, they said, we can't unlock now. Look at how bad these numbers are. And then the numbers went down during the summer. And then they started to go back up in the winter. But we were also sick of the lockdowns that all these states just started opening up. And I think New York was one of them. New York started, undoing things that they had done in the summer when numbers were way worse.
I'm just watching like SNL, and it's like Miley Cyrus's sax players all have these apparatuses blocking the air coming out, and all the violin players and the musicians are like in these like drum riser plastic thing, and I'm like, aren't you guys testing everyone that comes into your show? And aren't we at the point where all of them are vaccinated? And aren't we at the point now where like the crowd in there is down to like 25%? Like, is it for show? Or I'm just watching that and I'm thinking, are they just going to flip a switch and just get rid of all that? And SNL is going to be like back to normal because the mayor said it's okay?
I think so.
Or is it going to take...
I don't think SNL is doing it because they want to. I think they're doing it because of state rules, and I think they're doing it for show to be a good example.
Yeah.
Like, see, we care. You should care also because look at what we make our sax player do.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I'm in this, like Kristen keeps saying, you got to do a bachelor party. I would love to do a bachelor party. I just don't really want to tackle a bachelor party in COVID. Like, that sounds like it could be awful. But I've been thinking of places that maybe you could pull it off. And I was like, maybe New Orleans would be really fun right now. I just don't know.
I think we just need to go to Vegas. I think we just need to do like a UFC fight in Vegas because there's other stuff going on. Here's the thing. You and Kristen like to believe that you're in your 20s. But we're all old now. Like, none of your groomsmen stay out late, party, and drink people. Not one of them. Maybe one.
Well,
maybe one.
Half of my groomsmen probably don't have the time or means to go anywhere. I feel like my bachelor party is going to be people not in my wedding. Probably people from here that are like, I'll go to Vegas.
Yeah. But I just feel like Vegas has something for everyone. There's shows and events and great food and gambling.
But will there be between now and October? That's the question.
I mean, there's a UFC event. I think Conor McGregor's fighting in Vegas, I thought.
Yeah. You can go ahead and play the next video just so people like the UFC just reopened like a few weeks ago.
I know.
I kept thinking you should go to this fight. This was in Jacksonville, which is your hometown or where your parents live right now.
Yep.
And it's pretty wild to see this, And we've been a few weeks out since this fight. Have they found any repercussions of having all these? Like they tested everyone? Isn't that what happened?
Who? No.
I thought the UFC made everyone have a negative test that came in, and
no,
they didn't do any of that.
No, Dana White, like he's an asshole.
I thought he did a press conference and like we did it the right way, and we're trying to show people that this can be done responsibly. Are you saying he just said all that, but like there was no real right way?
I think in the past
you just buy tickets and come.
No. In the past, he did everything they were supposed to do.
Right.
Everybody was tested every day.
In Dubai, or in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. But that, DeSantis or whatever said, all right, Florida's opened up. We can have live events. And Dana has been saying the first state that opens up, we will throw a live event and it'll be a record-setting event. And he did.
Yeah.
And again, I understand if we're in the middle of a pandemic, we don't have a vaccine, maybe that is highly irresponsible. We have vaccines now. Everybody knows if they've already gotten it. Everybody, if they've already gotten the virus, everybody can choose the vaccine or not. So I feel like it's time to do live events again. If you're scared, stay at home. Don't go watch a UFC fight.
Well, the one I want to go to is like Motley Crue and Poison and Def Leppard. They're doing this big 80s like reunion thing, and they had to postpone it because of COVID, but their first show is like in a month. And you start reading about concerts like that, stadium tours, right? The biggest concerts you could have. And it's like if one show gets canceled because one state doesn't want to have that happen, it throws off all, you usually with these tours, you have multiple tour buses that have the same gear, and you're kind of like leapfrogging each other. But if you were to say like, man, two show, like maybe I don't know, New Jersey and New York are going to cancel, like that could throw off the whole East Coast, and you know, but no one wants to make the call. No one wants to tell all these ticket owners that like we're canceling the show yet again. And I think I talked about this on the show. There's musicians that are saying there's going to be a lack of venues for live music because so many of them have gone bankrupt because the only way they made money was having live events, and that's gone. And all of a sudden you're going to have every single band in existence wanting to go out on tour because no one's worked for a year and a half.
Yeah.
So if you have to put on a stadium tour and you have to compete with baseball, you have to compete with football, and you got to compete with every single band, it's like you can't have U2 and Bon Jovi in the same city unless they're in that one venue, you know?
Yeah.
And so they're just saying there's going to be a backlog on the number of concerts that can even happen. But I'm thinking, like, can we even have big shows? I mean, you could probably have 2,000, 3,000, maybe not even amphitheaters, but like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like theaters and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That probably could happen. But the bigger shows?
Why? Why? I mean, the bigger shows usually take place outside.
But I'm just saying there's so little inventory. If you're the type of person that can pull 50,000 people you know, imagine the top 10 country artists go out on tour and the top 10 rap artists and the top 10 like you start getting to where all these people want to go out on tour, there just might not be enough 50,000 person venues to host that event.
Maybe.
Then you got to schedule all of the travel and say, well, we got Tuesday. Like, I would imagine the logistics of lining up those shows over all of the stadiums throughout the country would be very difficult.
Yeah.
And then you start having a few little wrenches thrown in there where one state says, we have to lock back down, we have to limit it to 10,000 people, and you're like, our whole show's ruined, you know? It's going to be interesting to see how they pull it off, but I don't feel comfortable buying tickets right now, not knowing.
You wouldn't just get a refund?
I mean, if you bought through Ticketmaster, but if you buy through StubHub or some other like third-party ticket place, like I don't know how they do all of that. And in my case, like it's difficult because I live in Puerto Rico. If I want to hit up a Miami show because it's convenient, but then I'm not going to be in Miami, or maybe I want to go to Charlotte because I'm in Charleston or Nashville. You know, if you just live in Nashville, yeah, you'll just wait to go to the show again. But if you're trying to catch somebody in a very specific time frame and a location, that's going to be very, very difficult.
Logan asks, how many men have I wrestled this year? A lot.
Now,
you have
exciting news.
I am now a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so don't cross me. Don't.
You didn't sell that very
me.
well. I thought that would have been a little more like, you're just like, I'm a purple belt now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
That's a good deal.
No, it's a good deal. It's just like whenever you get promoted, you feel like the worst. Like I feel like I'm the worst purple belt in history because I've only been a purple belt for a few days. So when I get beat by a blue belt, it feels bad now. Whereas before I was like, I got beat by somebody who's as good as me.
Yeah.
And now when I get beat by a white belt, it's total humiliation. So I don't know. I mean, I'm glad. It's kind of proof of the work that I've put in. But on the other hand, I don't think I'm that into the belts and stuff.
It's impressive that you've
kept up.
Yeah, with COVID and stuff,
That's how little I care for my wife and you.
I mean, you are obsessed with jiu-jitsu. So, like, I get it. You're always on YouTube watching everything and doing these little private sessions. But I would just think to get promoted, you'd have to be doing it with a lot of people in big classrooms and just doing it more than even you have done.
Yeah. I mean, I was due for a promotion. Like, I've been a blue belt for going on 3 years. Many blue belts promoted at like 2 years, you know? So that's where he goes. And an interesting side note, I know nobody cares about this, but the best jiu-jitsu fighter and the best coach and the best team in the world moved to Puerto Rico a few months ago.
Yeah.
So I got to go to one of their classes, and like I can't even tell what they're teaching. They're on just a totally different level. But it's crazy, you know, just the people that are moving down here.
Not to change topics, but is Floyd Mayweather fighting
Logan Paul? Yes, he is.
That's actually happening?
Yeah.
Whew.
It is happening.
It's like another crazy world. Like, I feel like that's such an accomplishment to get on his radar to where Is there any chance that could pull more than Conor, or no way?
Well, I would say it had potential, but when, they were supposed to fight maybe in February, and they canceled it due to lack of interest or postponed it due to lack of interest, but I never saw any promotion. I never saw Floyd talk about it, and I never, Logan talked about it a little bit, but not that much. But then when Jake fought, who did he just fight?
The guy who just got kicked from the UFC. What's the wrestler's name? Ben
Askren.
Askren.
When they fought, they were everywhere. I mean, every YouTube show and every podcast that I listen to anyway that has nothing to do with fighting or whatever, one of them was on it promoting the fight. And it was just on the top of my mind every day. Like, oh, wow, Ben's doing an interview. Oh, Jake's doing another interview. They're getting into a scuffle at the weigh-in or whatever. It was just always on the top of my mind. And the other day was the first time I had ever seen Logan and Mayweather at an event talking about it. And then Jake stole the show and remember, did you see it? He stole Mayweather's hat and Mayweather freaked out like he was 3 years old. And
no.
It was ridiculous.
I was listening to your guy, Chael Sonnen, and he was talking about, is it Triller? Is that the name of the...
I think so.
The idea of that whole thing. Have you watched any of that?
A little bit of it.
I've watched the last two. Is it Logan or Jake? I get them confused.
Jake was the one who fought last.
I've watched both those events. It was the Tyson fight and then it was the Askren fight. And man, it's the commentary is horrible. You got Snoop Dogg. It's just unwatchable.
Yeah.
They don't know what it's probably like our show.
They're screaming. And stuff,
you're just listening to these guys who don't know what they're talking about at all. But it's it's just silly. But then the interesting thing was that they had, and this is what he brought up, is that they had live music. Now, half the live music was horrible, I thought. But then they had Justin Bieber, who I'm not really a big fan of either. I don't listen to his music that much. But I'm watching Bieber, and I'm like, this is kind of refreshing and kind of...
he is talented.
I feel like he kind of stole the show.
Okay,
I was
didn't see
the
that.
idea of mixing a concert of that caliber with the fighting, I was like, this could be something that's pretty interesting because... Once the UFC fight's over with, maybe if I haven't followed it at all, I want to see a couple highlights and get pumped up for the next fight. But I always feel like there's about 20 minutes in between fights. It's just total waste of time.
I agree.
And I'm like, if you could supplement that with something else, and maybe for me, music would be the number one thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, that could be a really interesting program.
I completely agree. It's better than just watching ads, or they're just playing the same promo video again and again and again and again. I've gotten to the point now, one, I'm an old man, and I just don't want to stay up that late anymore.
Yeah.
But I also hate how long it takes. I watch almost all the UFC events, but I watch it the next morning, and I watch only the top 2 fights that I care about, and I can watch everything in 20 minutes and just be done. And I don't have to watch any of the BS. So there is something...
Well, and we found that it's so difficult to order the UFC. I know. How many parties have we been to, and we're like... Let's maybe we're not getting good service, and we're like, let's just buy the UFC, and then you try to buy it, and
it doesn't work.
We can't figure it out, and then we just go back to streaming it.
Yep.
That last UFC though, that was one of the best.
And that's the one that I could have seen live in Jacksonville.
One? Oh, it was that one in Jacksonville.
Yeah,
that one, gosh, that was a crazy.
Sam Tagree, thank you so much for the super chat. We miss you guys.
How are your hat mask clips going? That's all wrapped up and you hit your number?
I mean, we had a goal of $5,000. We got 27 grand, which is good. I don't want to complain about $27,000, but you always have this dream in your mind that, it's going to be huge. And it wasn't huge, but I think we sold around 1,000 units. And then we had to buy 5,000. That was the minimum order quantity, I believe.
So 1,000 units or 1,000 people?
1,000. I don't. Oh, you're right. You're right.
20% of your
I think
inventory.
it's 1,300 units.
So you still have way more.
3,700 extra units. Yeah. So everyone on Kickstarter, hopefully today or tomorrow, all the shipments will have gone out. My business partner Andres has been mailing all 1,300 out over the last few days. And then I think we're going to put them on Amazon, hopefully, and sell them on Amazon, and maybe we'll sell them directly from hatmaskclips.com. But at this very moment, you still can't buy them.
Do you think interest in masks right now has reached an all-time low?
Yeah. Dude, I'm using this mask, like when I don't have my hat, I'm using this mask in the car that has the biggest stain on it. It's like a painting mask, you know, the one that's like holds its shape. It's blue. And it's got this dirt, like it looks like a poop stain or something on it. And I get in the car and then I'll show up to where I'm going and I'll go, oh, I don't have my hat. And then I'll reach for my poop stained mask and I'm going into places, you know, with this nasty ass mask.
Kinds of other
like
stuff.
This mask I've had from day one.
Yeah.
It is a 1.5 year old mask now, and I'm still occasionally wearing it. See, I don't think people really care about the masks, but if you're the type of person that wears a hat, you can attach the mask, and then you just can't forget the hat.
Before we get to maybe some of these super chats that we've missed, and we're probably close to wrapping this up,
gotta go to bed.
we gotta promote the new tutorial that we have coming out.
Okay.
We have a contest because we have been in such disagreement on what the cover featured image of this new tutorial should be.
Yeah.
You and I have created different ones, then David created one. If you go to the F-Stoppers channel, that's the current video, I think, that's on there right now, is us explaining.
It'd be easier to go to fstoppers.com/contests and
watch the video, and then you could download all the assets, and you could use your own assets. But basically, we're running a contest for like the next 2 days. It ends.
I think so. It's
where
yeah, featured image. So if you're a graphic designer, we basically just need a picture with the title of our tutorial on it. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And then the winner is going to, you know, get the tutorial early. But
the whole idea of the tutorial is it's the well-rounded photographer. That's the title.
Yeah.
We've been calling it something else for years that like I forget what it's called, but it's basically 8 instructors, and they're going to teach you like a little bit from each one of these genres so that you can hopefully take on as many jobs as possible and just become a better photographer. Yeah. I feel like one thing that I've learned through F-Stoppers that's made me a better photographer is just we forced ourselves to do so many things, and we started working with so many other photographers, and you know, we kind of had like the behind-the-scenes seat in all of these tutorials where, you know, we got to see what Peter Hurley does and all these other guys for years. And I feel like I've taken so many little things from someone like Mike Kelly. I mean, there's like techniques that he uses to clean up sheetrock with gradients and then add like noise that I use all the time now, and I don't shoot real estate at all. And I'm like, man, that one little gradient trick on the wall was definitely worth its weight in gold. And so I think this is exciting to, one, finally have something new to put out there because we haven't had a whole lot to do with the pandemic.
Got so little done last year.
Yeah, and so, you know, we teamed up with Elia. Just seeing all those guys again, it was kind of good. It like made me feel fulfilled as.
It was kind of good.
It was kind of good.
All right, anything else you have to talk about? I got to go to bed.
Did we get all those? You read all those? Or something about South Dakota? Did that get read?
What?
I'm just asking if you read all the super chats. All those got read?
Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry. There's Mojo Rogue says, I mean, everything kills old people. Quote from Lee Morris. And Photog Mike says, got the Johnson & Johnson shot, flying to South Dakota next month to visit Badlands, and July going to Glacier National Park. Photog Mike had COVID, so he's like you, he's extra safe.
I got COVID after getting the J&J vaccine. We didn't even talk at all about my experience and Kristen's experience.
What we did in the last video.
Did we? When was the last video?
I beamed in.
I thought that I tested positive that day.
Oh, wow. So we have more. We're not doing it today.
No, yeah, we should probably talk about it again. But, like, the short of it is, like, I had headaches and got mildly sick, but maybe the vaccine saved my ass.
Yeah, I'm sure it did.
And then Kristen, like, they got to a point, like, a weekend where I was starting to be like, man, if this moves to her breathing now, like, she was in her bedroom at least 3 or 4 days. Like, I didn't see her. And it started to get scary. I was like, man, like the last place I wanted to be was in Puerto Rico and catch COVID. And then here I am watching my fiance deal with this. And, you know, she got the vaccine the same day she got COVID. We know that for certain. And so, like, I was like, she has no immunity. She's young and healthy. But there was another guy here, a really famous podcaster that lives in our neighborhood. He's like a biohacker who's like doing all the crazy shit that you could do to your body. sleeping at the
be
perfect
healthy.
temperatures and the the water bath, all that stuff. Taking vitamin D for the whole year. He got really sick too. And so you just think like, man, a 30 or 40-year-old person gets sick who is in the best health of anyone. It's just kind of scary, But
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll do another update eventually. Who knows when it will be?
Oh yeah, and that guy knocking on our door, he brought this over. The Buffalo Trace.
Dirty Richard.
Dirty Richard. Luckily he didn't get in. Otherwise I would have given him COVID.
All right. Good night, everybody.